He always kept his phone close, but one night he forgot it on the table. What I found made my heart sink. I've never been one to snoop, but there are moments when curiosity gets the best of us. I'm F29, and my boyfriend, M31, and I had been together for 2 years. Our relationship seemed perfect on the surface, but there was always one thing that gnawed at me: his phone. He guarded it like a hawk, never letting it out of his sight. It wasn't just about the secrecy. It was about the way he'd always angle the screen away when I was around, or how he'd take it with him even for a quick trip to the kitchen. It felt off, but I pushed my doubts aside for the longest time, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. One evening, while he was in the kitchen making us dinner, he left his phone on the table. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed it. My heart pounded as I unlocked it. Yes, I knew his password. It was the same as his laptop, which he had told me in a moment of trust. What I found made my heart sink. There were messages from someone saved under a fake name. Let's call them Jordan. The texts weren't just casual catch-ups. They were emotional, intimate, and filled with pet names that should have been reserved for me. The more I scrolled, the more it became painfully clear. Jordan was his ex-girlfriend, F30. They'd had a tumultuous relationship before we met, and he had assured me it was over for good. Clearly, that wasn't the case. Our relationship had its foundation on trust, or so I thought. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I always believed we were solid. Yet, there were these little things about his phone that always felt like red flags. I remember confronting him about it once, and he brushed it off, saying I was just being paranoid. My best friend, F29, had always been suspicious of his behavior. She'd often tell me to keep an eye out, but I never wanted to doubt him. My sister, F26, on the other hand, thought I was overthinking things. She'd always say, if he hasn't given you a reason not to trust him, then don't stress about it. But now, staring at these texts, I felt my world crumbling. These weren't just friendly messages. They were deeply emotional and hinted at a connection that hadn't been severed. I decided I needed to confront him. I couldn't let this fester inside me. When he came back into the living room, I showed him the phone and asked, "Why is Jordan sending you messages like this?" His face went pale, and then he got defensive. He insisted they were just friends, that I was blowing things out of proportion. The argument escalated quickly. He accused me of not trusting him, of invading his privacy, and I felt even more confused and hurt. How could he not see how inappropriate this was? Feeling lost, I reached out to my best friend. She was furious on my behalf and decided to dig deeper. She's a bit of an internet sleuth, and within a few hours, she had found out that my boyfriend had met his ex in person multiple times. He had never mentioned these meetings to me. Each revelation felt like another knife in my back. How could he lie so effortlessly? Desperate for some clarity, I confided in his sister, F26. To my shock, she admitted she had her suspicions too, but didn't want to interfere in our relationship. She said she had seen the way he was with his phone and had her doubts, but hoped he would come clean on his own. This added another layer of betrayal for me. I felt like I was the last one to know in a story that was my own. In the end, I decided I couldn't move past the betrayal and lies. I ended the relationship. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, but I knew I needed to choose my peace of mind over a dishonest relationship. My best friend and sister were my rocks during this time, helping me regain my confidence and trust in myself. My now ex made several attempts to reconcile, sending me long messages and even showing up at my place with flowers. But I stood firm. I couldn't go back to a relationship built on deceit. So, how do I cope with this betrayal? How do I rebuild my trust in future relationships? Have any of you experienced something similar? How did you manage to move forward?